The stock market is opening pretty strong. The economy, I've got a friend and a neighbor who says, watch the markets on this stuff. Watch what the markets do, and you'll get a pretty good indicator of where we're headed as a country. The media reaction has been mixed, and that fascinates me. Because honestly, when you hear what the president said yesterday and talking about, being careful, doing this one step at a time, one step at a time. Here's what the president said about kind of baby steps. Dr. Fauci has talked about the rolling reopening. Here's the president yesterday from courtesy of Grabian.
We are not opening all at once, but one careful step at a time. We're starting our life again. We're starting rejuvenation of our economy again in a safe and structured and very responsible fashion.
3 stages, 3 phases. It's pretty specific. We're going to kind of break it down. You could read it, incidentally, if you want to text the keyword open to 1-800-655-6453. We'll send you back an article that shows the 3-phase plan and the guidelines that were revealed yesterday, that were unveiled. It was a big announcement. It was yesterday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time in the White House. Now, the reaction to me tells you a lot about the people reacting. If you are cautiously optimistic, even a little bit excited at the idea that there's a plan of guidance, there's a plan in place, there's a plan that the governors are able to glean from, and incidentally, he's not waving a magic wand, so Trump haters can't blame him now for trying to say, I can do this unilaterally. He's not. He's saying that the governors have the guidance, the governors now have the information and the steps for this 3-phase approach. The reaction in the media fascinates me. This is the way it breaks down. Mainstream media, like the Washington Post, completely throws a wet blanket over it. The Washington Post analysis, here's the headline: eager to return to normal, Trump and Pence offer questionable coronavirus data. Let me give you an example of what this writer from the Washington Post means by questionable data. The president said nationwide, more than 850 counties, or 30% of our country, have reported no new cases in the last 7 days. Now, let's listen together to what the president said, and then I want you to see an example of a newspaper that is clearly not very enthusiastic about steps to reopen the country. And that, to me, is really, really telling. Here's the president talking about how many counties and what percentage of America hasn't shown any new cases in the past 7 days.
But there is no such thing as an optimistic projection on death. One person is too many. Our experts say the curve has flattened and the peak in new cases is behind us. Nationwide, more than 850 counties, or nearly 30% of our country, have reported no new cases in the last 7 days. Because of our early and aggressive action, we have avoided the tragedy of healthcare rationing and deadly shortfalls that have befallen many other nations which, wherever possible, we are helping.
So here's the Washington Post. They're fact-checking like they all love to do. Questionable data, they scream at the president's announcement yesterday. Here's what the Washington Post says. That first figure, the more than 850 counties, is accurate. They have to begrudgingly admit, that's true. Data from Johns Hopkins as of April 15th indicate that 905 counties had added no new confirmed infections since April 8th. So when the president said more than 850 counties have reported no new cases in the last 7 days, the Washington Post sort of reluctantly says, yep, that's true. But, and here's the qualifier, More than half of those counties didn't have any cases in the first place. Like that's some kind of a triumphant gotcha. The president's point is still intact because just because a county didn't have any infections in the first place, the fact that there are no new infections in the last 7 days still is a good thing. This has been a spreading virus. So, how do you poo poo the idea that a county didn't have any infections and from April 8th to now there were no new ones? Washington Post says, see, that's questionable data. That's questionable data. Then they go on to rip apart the president's assertion that 30% of the country has reported no new cases. And of course, what they do is they break it down by population. They say that's is that as a function of the number of states? Maybe. As a function of population? No, 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 no. No, it's way lower. So, forgive me. I'm trying to make sure that everything is sort of done in a good faith way. I'm trying to have good faith. I heard an extensive interview that Governor Cuomo gave. You're going to kill me. You're going to hate me. You're going to hate me when I say this, but I'm going to say it. I heard in a long form interview that Cuomo gave to Howard Stern this week, and Cuomo is an utterly likable guy in that environment. Now, he's got a very, very fawning, supportive, guy, a New Yorker like Stern, who loves Cuomo, loves Hillary, so obviously ideologically very different from many of us. But Cuomo was a likable guy. He was funny. He was relaxed. He was concerned. He admitted to shedding a lot of tears for the deaths and the despair in New York, explaining, listen, I give credit where credit is due. And earlier in the week, I told you how much I appreciated Cuomo saying I extend my hand in partnership and cooperation to the president. I don't want to fight with him. Listen, I admire that. You may not like it, and listen, I'll never forget Cuomo's the same guy who said America was never that great to begin with. I'll never forget the fact that Cuomo's the guy who said conservatives really aren't welcome. People with pro-life values aren't welcome in his state. So don't worry. I know what he's about and I know who he is. But when somebody does something like that, that means a lot, I think, in a time like this. I'm trying to have a good faith approach to this. I'm trying my best. I come in every day trying to understand that Democrat families are just as anxious and out of work as Republican families. This shouldn't matter. But doggone it, these people don't act in good faith. When you tear down some optimism, when you tear down factually correct data that the president presents, I mean, think about that. Well, 850 counties, sure, but half of them didn't have any infections. Well, so what? That's a good sign. Nobody traveled into that county or nobody got sick in that county over the last 7 days. That's what they're looking at. Those are what the statisticians and the government. There's a bad faith effort here. The never Trumpers want the country to fail in this because they feel it'll be Trump's failure. Look at the way they politicize this ridiculous look at this ridiculous argument about a medicine, a drug, hydroxychloroquine. It's become a Trump bellwether. You either if you like Trump, okay. If you don't, I've got people who don't like him whose life they said was saved by hydroxychloroquine and Z-Pak. And now a lot of it is out in the open. John McConnell, I've told you about this. I've known more about it than I let on to on air. Former ABC radio executive who I worked for years ago, used to know him quite well. I connected with him recently. He was sure he was about to die. Double pneumonia. I mean, he was really sick. And his friend Sean Hannity got Dr. Oz involved with his own personal physician, as it was revealed in a big article and an interview with Michael Harrison from Talkers Magazine this week. It's on their podcast, talkers.com. And John McConnell said, my doctor said, okay, let me try the hydroxychloroquine. And he said it saved his life.